In the time of Jesus Christ, while the Roman Empire was spreading across the world, there was another mighty empire on the rise, the Aksumites of Ethiopia.
I'm heading to a mountainous region more than 300 miles north of Addis, to the city of Aksum. Now a small farming town, it was once the rich capital city of a mighty empire
that dominated much of northeastern Africa for 600 years. Tradition has it that the Aksumite kings traced their lineage back to King Solomon, and even claimed that his son brought the Ark of the Covenant, at the time a Jewish relic believed to have mysterious powers, here in the 10th century.
The Aksumites linked to King Solomon, as evidenced by their exclusive claim to the Ark of the Covenant, did two important things. One, it helped give their kings legitimacy to the throne. And two, it helped create an entirely singular, unique brand of Christianity. Now, some of the only clues left of this one-time world power are located right across the street in a field of obelisks and inside the mysterious tombs of a lost empire. I'm meeting with a guy named Burhan Burhana. He's one of the best experts in this area on the relatively unknown history of the Aksumite Empire. Burhan?
Hi, Dan.
How
Nice
you
to meet
doing?
you.
You too. So this was the center of the Aksumite Empire.
Yes.
Like Egypt, Aksum was one of the ancient world's great empires for 600 years. From the 1st century BC to the 7th century AD, they mastered major trade routes between India and the Mediterranean, and across the Red Sea, exporting luxury goods like gold, ivory, and spices. The proof of the Aksumites' wealth and power is here, a field of over 120 towering obelisks, including the largest monolithic stone in the ancient world,
and the grave markers of the Aksumite royalty. Erected some 300 years before the birth of Christ, they weigh up to 500 tons, and each was cut from a single stone and hauled here,
some say by elephants, from miles away.
So these monuments, these obelisks, are massive. Why are they here?
They are here to mark tombs for the royal family.
Okay.
Rising up to 80 feet, each stone was typically held up by a foundation measuring roughly 10% of its total height, and bolstered on two sides by gigantic horizontal stones.
Surrounding the central foundation are several underground rooms used to entomb the dead and seal away incredible riches. War and lack of resources have made archaeology a luxury in modern Ethiopia, and 90% of these tombs are unexplored.
This is insanely huge.
Like the pyramids in Egypt, this elaborately carved stele marks the final resting place for a king
As formidable as any pharaoh.
So these are the windows, these are the beams. So this is essentially the replica of a palace, a royal palace,
Aksumite royal palace.
for the royals who are buried beneath it.
Yes, exactly.
These massive stones were only grave markers. It was the rooms below where they would spend eternity.
Now these are the chambers here.
The chambers here.
There's 10 of these.
Yeah.
And each one of these chambers would be a burial place.
A burial and a treasury as well.
Oh, okay.
Because even before the death of the king, they were used as a store where they keep the treasures. And after the death of the king, the treasures were used for the life after death.
So this is like in Egypt. They would build these tombs before the king actually died.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. If you're upstairs looking around at this field, you see stelae, all these obelisks everywhere in this huge field. Each one of them is the marker for a grave beneath. Only 5% of them have been excavated. Now they have fully excavated some of these places, but you know who got here first? Were grave robbers.
Many burial chambers had treasure rooms beside them.
The grave robbers would make their way into the tomb, then cut a hole through the wall to get to the ivory and gold next door.
Imagine what you see is now an empty room filled with ivory tusks, gold, silver, everything that this king would represent himself with in the afterlife. This is how prosperous the Aksumites were.
These burial rites ended in the 4th century AD.
When the Aksumite kings adopted Christianity, and the Jewish relic they had possessed for centuries became their greatest treasure, the Ark of the Covenant. Rumors have placed this precious artifact all over the world, but this is the land of King Solomon's son, Menelik, and many believe he brought the Ark home. Legend says it is still here today, in this small church just across the road from the pagan tombs.
Living inside that church is the Guardian, a monk whose entire life is dedicated to the protection of the Ark and praying by its side. Ethiopians have been assigning monks this duty for almost 3,000 years. Indeed, in 3 millennia, no one has been allowed to see the Ark except the Guardians. Not kings, not popes, not even heads of state. No one has been allowed inside.
By the 6th century AD, 1400 years after the Ark may have first arrived here, the Western world was in chaos.
The Roman Empire had fallen, and Europe was mired in the horrors of the Dark Ages. But the Aksumite Empire was at its peak, and just XX yards from the pagan obelisks, their Christian king Caleb built a magnificent final resting place, a tomb that may have lured relic-hunting Knights Templar, searching for the Aksumites' great treasure.
I already feel this is a much grander, deeper tomb than the others.
Yeah, this is the last, maybe the last Aksumite king's tomb.
Really?
We have, which belongs
What
to the
is
son
this?
of King Caleb. This is the room for the grave with 3 sarcophagus, maybe for him and for his wife and for his son or daughter. And one sarcophagus is different from the others because it's with a cross, with Aksumite hand cross.
Huh. Carved in the end there.
Yeah. We do have one Aksumite cross right here.
It does look like a Templar cross.
Exactly. But Templars were 11th century, but this is even the Aksumite used in the coin in the 4th century AD. That's why we call it Aksumite one.
This cross, almost identical to the Crusader symbol, predates it by 7 centuries. It could be a coincidence, or it could prove Europeans were here, looking for the Ark. Many claim the Knights Templar dug for it under the Temple Mount in Jerusalem and searched the ancient Jordanian city of Petra, and they may have come to Aksum as well.
So why did the Templars come here?
They know that through the legend, the Ark of the Covenant was transported to Ethiopia. So they came here to search for the Holy Grail and for the Ark of the Covenant. So they adopted some elements like a cross like this, which they call it the Knight Templars or the Crusaders cross like that.
Fascinating. That's where this is from. Cool.
Did the predecessors of the Knights Templar come here searching for the Ark? And did they find it? Or is the greatest treasure in Christianity still locked away in a small church in a dusty town? The answers may be lost in time, like the once great but now forgotten Empire of Aksum.
Everything in this tomb speaks to the height of the Aksumite Empire. It doesn't get any better than this. In fact, this king sees the Aksumite Empire at its height. After this, certain factors contribute to the downfall. One, the Muslim armies end up cutting off the trade routes, the sea trade routes that the Aksumites have used for their great prosperity. It becomes a landlocked state. So all of these factors contribute to the decline of the great Aksumite Empire. And what follows are the Dark Ages.